Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are award-winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast and we return. Some of these guys are returning after a long avid break. They are. Look at their faces. Look how happy they are to be back. Some of them, not all of them. If you're with us for the very first time, you can find us on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms. We're of course on X, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook too. And we are recharged, we are re-energized, and we are here to review Spurs' final home pre-season game of the season, which sees a narrow defeat to Bayern Munich. Not the result we wanted. We'll be coming on to that in more detail. And of course, the performances and where it leaves Spurs in terms of just under now a week to go until the start of the Premier League season. Yes, I'm aware Spurs don't play until the Monday evening, but it is a week until the start of the Premier League actually formally begins. Are we ready? Do we need more? I'm sure we need more. I know these boys think we need more. Let's get and talk about everything Tottenham. Let's bring in our panel first. He's back alongside me. Oh, we saw his beautiful face during pre-season. He's back here again for much more. We've got wonderful actor TJ Ramini back in the building. TJ, thank you so much for blessing us with your presence. Welcome back, my man.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to see you and back as ever on a very illustrious panel this morning for me here in Los Angeles. So nice to see you, Rick. Lovely to see you, Russ. Ash, nice to see your face as well, my friend. Looking forward to the show.
Amen. Thank you so much. Joining TJ. Look, he's been around Last Word on Spurs over the course of the last few weeks. This poor man, we've not left him alone all summer. We've got one called Ashmatic over at the Spurs Kings. Ash, love to be back on. We'll be getting into all of the pre-season and, of course, the game that we've just seen. How are you first? Are you well?
Yes, my brothers, I am well. It's good to be back. And yeah, let's talk ball, man. Let's talk Spurs. Let's talk Munich. Let's get into it, man.
Amen. Fantastic. And also, finally, last, certainly not least, we've given this man the summer off because he knows what's coming in terms of a season. And I know he's chomping at the bit as much as we are delighted to have him back along this side us here on this panel. We've got the wonderful broadcast extraordinaire, one of our very own. Russ Williams is back. Russ, they've been driving me mad. Bring Russ back. We need Russ back. Here he is. He's back. How are
they
you?
Mad? It's lovely to see you, dear leader, after your Greek wedding. And we were texting. I seem to recall when you were on the motorway, Paphos,
yes,
I think.
Correct. That is correct.
Moaning about something. But anyway, minimal moans tonight. After the Euros and England's rather unusual performance and the end result, I'm glad that the season is with us now.
Joe, I'll be honest with you, it's like we've never really been away. And
yes.
like I say, there's a lot to discuss in terms of the game and when it does leave Spurs, of course, their final game of the pre-season. Russ, let's stick with you. We haven't had you on all summer, so I'd be interested to get your thoughts on this one. I think, look, many will say Spurs improved in the second half, but the visitors did hold on in that 3-2 victory for Bayern Munich. Lovely for Harry Kane to return to N17, some nice moments for the younger players, but again, you know, it's going back to that issue that we discussed a lot last season, Russ, set pieces. Two of the goals conceded from set pieces for the hosts. The issues do continue for Ange Postecoglou. As I said, less than a week before the Premier League does start. How do you analyse, what do you take away from that game, given it is pre-season? I know many won't want to get carried away, but again, the reaction online around social media is this concern around set pieces and whether Spurs are genuinely ready for the start of the season. How do you see it for you?
Well, I mean, if look, for me, this is a fitness test, this game. So the real football, as we know, starts Monday at Leicester. However, when you see the same mistakes over and over again that we saw in the last few months of the season with set pieces, and I think now they're becoming such an issue that even Vicario is looking uncertain. In the first half, I don't think he covered himself in glory at all. And he's not really got anyone to challenge him, has he, in the squad? So that is a bit of a concern, really. But the set pieces were a worry. I agree that the second half, the young players that came on really had a go. And I think, the crowd responded. But be under no illusions. We're playing Bayern Munich. This is a team that if it goes badly wrong for them, we could be playing in the Europa League. And, I have a major concern, not only with set pieces, we're so open at the back. If you think back to Newcastle at the back end of last season, Almiron and Anthony Gordon in behind the fullbacks, so easy. And we saw that a lot tonight. And I just wonder why these glaring problems don't seem to be so easy to solve for Ange and his coaching staff and obviously, importantly, the players. Because it's all very well Dominic Solanke coming in, and welcome to Spurs. He gets my full support. I don't think any of us would have said when Harry left that the replacement ultimately was going to be Dominic Solanke, but he will suit Ange's play up front. I think most of us probably recognise that. But at the back, I think this is where we're going to be in quite a lot of trouble, and unless something changes. And we're not playing 41 games this season. We're going to play a lot more, 8 more in the Europa League in the group stages. Hopefully a better performance in the League Cup, which comes around very quickly. Then we've got the FA Cup in January. And at times we struggle to play 1 game a week. So we need the depth, and hopefully there's some more players coming in the forms of not only a winger for me, an Eze, which I think is a real possibility, actually, fingers crossed. But I think we're crying out for a midfielder, a baller in midfielders, somebody with massive experience who can take hold of a game and not think backwards and sideways and actually get people to play forward, as Bergvall incidentally did.
Yeah.
His ball for Decky's second goal was fantastic, but pre-season, he didn't go backwards, hardly at all. He was sideways and forward. And that's why we've got him. That's why he's got the reputation. And that's what we're missing. We need forward play, and we need to tighten up at the back. And, I do worry. But let's be positive. We haven't kicked a ball. It's only Leicester on Monday night with the happy clappers, and then you're in the Premier League, the former champions. We know how it could end, but we've got to be positive, because if we don't enter the season, initially positively, then what's the point? So we do have to look forward and hope we get a couple of more bodies in, because what Ange wants, he appears to get. So certainly with Solanke anyway. And the club have spent over £100 million in the last 3 summers. For the people who say, well, they don't spend any money, do they? Well, they have.
I think the issue is always, Russ, as you know, it's not they don't spend money, it's do they spend the money on the right players? I think that, again...
do they spend it wisely? Yeah. Absolutely right. Well, that is a totally different debate. And we're going to find out pretty quickly in the first 2 or 3 months whether Dominic Solanke is the answer for a goal scorer for us, because we all knew last season, desperate for one. Well, now we've got one. Is he going to be good enough? For me, he's not as good as Ollie Watkins, personal opinion.
Listen, we will come on to Solanke shortly. I think, again, on a subject, I want to ask you guys about that signing in a bit more detail. Ash, I want to bring you in to discuss that result and really what it means for you going into the start of the season, how you feel about it, because I think for many that will look at that game. Yes, there's a promising youngsters that I think many have been ravishing about over the summer, but it does feel like it's the same reoccurring issues that have really been brought to a head at the back end of last season. We know we finished the season with 5 defeats in the last 7. I know many wanted to look at the fact that, again, we need to give Ange the summer, get his players in, have a change of coaching staff. Does it worry you, Ash, that the same glaring issues are there? Or do you think, look, it's only a pre-season friendly, there's still players that need to come back into that squad? Where do you stand on the back of the result and the overall performance, where, again, we saw a mixture of different players in that game?
Yes, lads, man. Big yourselves up. Big up the chat, first of all. Marlon, I see you, man. I see you holding my back there. Yeah, man. Big up everyone watching or listening back on audio. But yeah, I'm just a Spurs fan. What do I know? From what I saw, lads, was it was quite simple. We started on a house on fire. We pressed aggressively. I thought Kulu did well to win that ball back, twice, unsettle Upamecano, who was quite nervous, and obviously he hadn't had many preseason games. I think that was his first one back. So I think that maybe that was good from Kulu to pick up on that, and his energy, him getting in the pockets, holding up the ball, as well as we know he can do that as well. We know he can hold that ball up. He's aggressive, he's strong, he's tenacious, drives up the pitch. In fact, we don't have a striker, but him playing in that false 9 role, I thought he did quite well. And I thought Spurs started to go back into their old habits slowly when Bayern settled into the game. And one thing I noticed was, and Russ spoke about earlier, what happens is, they took turns. I saw Kimmich drop into their back two or the back three, because they played similar to us. Like the way companies set them up, they were quite aggressive with a 2-3-5 in possession. So they had two centre backs when they had possession, and then the rest were like high up the pitch, if that makes sense. But what I saw was like either Muller, Gnabry would drop in sometimes, or Kimmich would drop in, and what they would do is they'll do one or two passes, and then there's a quick switch, and that's how they bypassed our central block, because we know we like to invert the fullbacks to clog up those central areas so teams can't play through us. But that leaves those channels exposed, and that's what I mean by the same old same, because it's like fans are worried. Have we learned? Has Ange learned? Have the tactics changed? And that's where the massive concerns are, because one of those first 3 games that are starting will be Newcastle away, and we have PTSD when we saw what happened, as Russ has already mentioned. And so Gnabry was causing trouble on the right-hand side when balls were getting fired over diagonal by Tell or whoever's on that left-hand side. And then Tell, I thought we were linked with him, I think the season before last or last season.
Right. It was actually correct. Yep.
He was just causing all sorts of issues down that right-hand side. Porro was struggling, I felt, and Dragushin as well. There was issues from us playing out from the back, and it actually happened before the goal. So before the goal actually happened, I felt like when Vicario was on the ball, it's like we don't mix it up enough, where we need to sometimes play it into the channels or go a little bit longer, just so Bayern Munich sit off of us, and then we can go short, and then we can play it out from the back. And then that way we're not pressed so aggressively, because the last game, that's exactly what happened. And we lost and conceded many big chances because of it. And it's like we never learned from that kind of playbook. Like, okay, Bayern are going to do X, Y, Z, but then we repeated the same mistakes. Me personally, I'm happy that we are getting exposed again. And I'm like, look, because it's so obvious, I'm hoping that they address it. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm hoping by the time the season starts, they're like, okay, because in the second half, I did see a difference. I saw Vicario move that ball further forward, travel with it, and join the back two, because the two centre backs, they like to split, don't they? And then he became the third centre back, and he pushed up, and then the distribution was a bit higher up, and that allowed us to get higher up the pitch. And then it didn't look so disjointed, because everyone's like, oh, midfield, we look all over the place. What's going on? What we doing? These fullbacks keep inverting. We're making, but I just felt like it was mistakes we kept making again and again and again, and we just weren't learning from it. But if I'm going to be positive now, like some of the good stuff I saw, as I said already, Kulu looked good. I thought our wingers were, I think in the final third, the decision making from our wingers is what let us down in that first half. But I felt like in the second half, the inclusion of a Bergvall, Bentancur, and a few other players, like I call him Double M, Mikey Moore. You know what I'm saying? We could go Ben for Ben, or we could go M for M. Yeah, Mikey, for me, not Bobby, Moore, I thought he looked physically quite good for a youngster. Bergvall looked good for a youngster physically as well, even though he had that little lung kind of thing there. I was a bit worried myself. But I just felt like in possession, we looked a lot more tidier, we looked more refined. And so they wasn't able to press us the same way. And then they stood off us a little bit, and that gave us time to breathe. And then we were able to move up the pitch. And that's where our second goal came through. Bergvall doing that lovely assist, the nice weighted pass into Kulusevski, who hits it first time, gives it the keeper the eyes, makes him drop on the floor, hits in the bottom corner. And I'm like, right, we can move, you know, it's kind of working. You know, but yeah, go on.
On these points, Ash, I think you're absolutely spot on. I think that kind of analysis you've given us there, I think what people look at in the first half is the concerns that you raise, and in second half, a lot of the fact that the youngsters very much, I feel, kind of did give us some hope and optimism going into next week. Which, listen, I don't want to get too carried away. It is only a pre-season friendly, but like I think you and Russ have said there are concerns, and it wouldn't be right if we don't air their concerns, because again, I think this is what the show is all about. We can't just sit here and be ultra positive and not look at the concern aspects that we've got.
just to add on to it, just to finish off, and then TJ, you can jump on. But like, pause. But I was going to say, the fullback situation, I thought Spence was good in possession. There's one time he put it through the guy's legs. I was like, oh, Bissouma and them two look good at times, but out of possession, that's where the worry happened for me, because they switched off at times. And I thought that goal that was conceded, obviously Kulusevski was on the back post, but Spence was there on the back post as well. And I felt like they targeted that left-hand side when they were doing those switches of play on Spence's side. I thought he had moments where he defended well, and it had moments of lapse of concentration. And I think that's where they punished us. I think when the doggy came on and we had our starting back two, there was less mistakes. We looked a bit more assured on the ball as well. Obviously, Ben Davies and 𝐿𝐵𝐺, I'm not sure if they played too many games together as a partnership, but you could just tell the relationship between Van der Ven and Romero looked way more sure. But I'm going to leave it on that, man, because otherwise...
No, that's absolutely fair. That is. TJ, I want to bring you in. A lot to digest there. Love to have you on. Well, I know many are waiting with bated breath as to what's going to come out of TJ's mouth, because this man, whenever he's on Last Word on Spurs, does seem to offer up some optimism, some hope, but at the same time does always strike the call when it comes to criticism that needs to be aired on Last Word on Spurs. I mean, look, TJ, it was a nice touch by Ange to bring on Lancashire at the same time as Bayern brought on Harry Kane. I think, as we touched upon, Bergvall and Gray impressive once again. They don't really feel the pressure when they win the ball back, and many would have been pleased by Udogie's performance too after being out for so long. But I think there will be that concern, as we've discussed, that Ange, many of them, of course, still absolutely love him, and they really, really do. But how many goals, TJ, do we really need to concede from set pieces before we do something about it? You know, many will look at the fact that they don't care it's pre-season. It feels like it's a systematic issue that will cost us going into the second season. That doesn't really seem to have been addressed. And that's concerning, given the fact he's had a couple of new additions to the backroom staff there. And look, I'm aware again, he's not got his first full starting 11 in there, but we're Spurs fans. And as we all know, we do result to concern at the first point of tragedy. So give us some hope, TJ. What do you make of that? It's a friendly, right? But at the same time, there's concerns. Is that fair?
Yeah, I mean, listen, that's was going to be the first thing that I'm going to say, so I'll stick to that. I am going to preface this whole thing, and I think we should preface this whole show, as should those watching and listening. It is a pre-season friendly. Now, obviously, you know, during the halftime chat in the QPR game, I'm sure that many of us watched, they said this isn't a friendly for us, but they then followed that with, we use this to get into shape. We use this to work on our fitness. You know, we use this to work on the patterns that we are preparing for in training. So it's never fun to lose a football match, never. However, we have talked many times, I've certainly talked about it many times, about how the upper echelons of sport, the difference between perfection and abject disaster are a couple of percent. Because at that level, your room for error is so minuscule. And so just so we all feel a little bit better, and I'm not just spreading, I guess I am spreading sunshine. Okay, shamelessly spreading sunshine. But I hope with a semblance of pragmatism. It is a pre-season friendly. So we should all just remember that when we're thinking about this game. Yes, there are concerns. Yes, there are positives. And we should adjust both of those. Our positives, it's a pre-season friendly. It's not the same as when there's points on the board. Our negative, it's not the same. It's a pre-season friendly until there are points that could potentially be lost. So I'll start with the biggest negative for me is, to Ash's point, when we don't have the ball, we kind of look a bit lost at sea. That's my largest concern, is that when we are out of possession, we just don't really know what to do. We know that Ange wants us to push from the front with great verve and speed and determination and aggression. And when we did that, it looked to be really effective. But again, that's something that has to be coordinated. You know, for fans of Gladiator, you know, when you got Russell Crowe saying, hold. Now, you know, coordinating that kind of press has to be done with almost kind of military precision. And so that's going to take some time to work out. But my largest concern, if I have any, to be honest, from that game, because again, I'm tempering my expectation because it's a pre-season friendly, is the amount of space that we leave in the back, especially from wide positions. That was DEFCON 5 for me. And the fact that not only from set pieces, but also from open play, there just seemed to be acres of space in behind both of our fullbacks. Yes, we looked more assured when Romero and Van der Ven came on. Of course we did. And so perhaps we can apply that to all of our expectations, that when we have had players who've had one season playing with each other, it makes an enormous difference. We have so many new players coming into a new system with still a new manager. So let's temper expectation a little bit. Of course, we're all entitled to our opinion. And if we want to worry and we want to throw toys at the pram and Ange is no good and this guy should go and he's terrible and blah, 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 by all means do it. However, from my opinion, I would suggest a smattering of pragmatism. This is a preseason friendly. I think there's a lot more positives than negatives. And so I personally am looking forward to the season and seeing us shore up at the back and score more goals going up front. And whoever the person was, I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was. You're right. I did pick Dominic Solanke early doors. So I'm delighted to see what he's going to bring. But I know we'll talk about him later.
We will. Just to get a flavour of some of the comments that have come in as well. Psycho Fox, love the show. Sorry for Spence. Song continually left him exposed. First off showed we need that quality left back cover for Destiny. Solanke Richie will help. Defensively too. Bergvall must start as the 10. I think many are suggesting that. Again, Sean suggesting that as well. Bergvall for Maddison. We are 9 days away from kickoff. Bayern, of course, for them, they're 14 days away. I think for Bayern, that was their third pre-season game. For Spurs, it was their 6th. I think, again, that's why there is those concerning alarm bells when you look at the difference between the two sides, that it does feel that there is this erring concern around that Spurs, without the ball, they're in that consistency that you would want if that is our final preseason game. You just feel Spurs ideally would need a couple more before the start of the season. I think that is why, again, you are seeing some concerns, and I feel that it's a big week coming up for Spurs. Dare I say, in the transfer window, I think it does say, despite the fact they've gone and smashed their club record, I think many are looking at that team now and thinking that does need more quality in there. And I think it'd be hard to really disagree with that. Now, just to get onto the team for this one, if I can, Spurs, of course, Ange Postecoglou, he selected his final side before the Premier League season began, with Bayern Munich visiting the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Romero, Van der Ven, Bentancur, Lo Celso, having only just returned to training exploits after international duty, started the game. Of course, I must just add, Lo Celso, as I mentioned, that mix there, wasn't featured at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. We understand, for reasons that we haven't actually come to understand to date, he was one of the only returning players to not make that bench. Dragusin, of course, did play that centre-back pairing with Ben Davis. Jed Spence started again at left-back with Pedro Porro on the right. Up front, Dejan Kulusevski continued in a false 9 with Heung-min Son and Brennan Johnson either side of him. Harry Kane and Eric Dyer on the bench for the visitors. And I can tell you that Harry Kane has refused to hold the Malta Cup trophy at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. For those that are wondering, there was a trophy presentation after the game, but Harry refused point blank to hold the trophy. So one trophy Harry did actually hold at the start of proceedings was a little gift that he was given by club legend Ledley King. Eric Dyer also getting a nice little gift there as part of their long service to Spurs. But I mean, in terms of the teams that lined up, it's worth noting that Harry Kane and Eric Dyer didn't start the game. Both were on the bench for the visitors. Spurs started that team with Vicario, Porro, Dragusin, Davis, Spence, Sarr, Basuma, Maddison, Johnson, Kulusevski, Son, with the substitutes on the day of Austin Gunter, Udogie, Romero, Van der Ven, Donnelly, Skip, Gray, Bergvall, Bentancur, Devine, Moore, Solomon, Werner, Lancashire. Now, before I do get into the actual general game itself, Harry Kane said on the point of collecting that presentation that I've spent almost 20 years at Tottenham, huge part of my life. It will always be a huge part of my life. The fans were amazing to me and still are. And before kickoff, Spurs presented to date their 3 summer signings of Dominic Solanke, Archie Gray, and Lucas Bergvall. And as TJ said earlier, we are going to get into more about Dominic Solanke later on in this show. But Russ, I'll ask you, in terms of the team, look, it's pre-season. We know players have got to come back. We know players are going to most certainly be leaving the football club. Obviously, Lo Celso, the noticeable absentee. Any surprises, Russ, in terms of that lineup for you?
Not really, actually, because you can't expect him, obviously, to start with his starting 11 that will play up at Leicester. I mean, I understand that James Maddison is going through a bad time, which is why he wasn't at the Euros with England. His form fell off a cliff. He's a concern, I think. And I think we saw once again in the first half that James, who'll be so disappointed with the way it's going for him at the moment, is not quite at the races. And the concern is that bad form goes forward into the new season. So I think Ange is right. Give him as many minutes as possible. We conceded the goals in the first half that we did concede, and we're disappointed with them. But only one of our back four, who will start at Leicester, was actually playing. So, and then in the second half, of course, it looked much more like the back four that we're going to be playing at Leicester and in Premier League games if fit. For me, just looking at the substitutes, to see some of these young players there that we've invested a lot of money in, it's fantastic when someone like the Swede, Lucas Bergvall, comes on and plays with the confidence. And he has a good degree of physicality about him. And I don't think it's entirely unreasonable to suggest that he could get the nod from Ange ahead of James Maddison. It's maybe for the first game a bit unlikely, but he's definitely snapping at James's heels. And for me, in midfield is where we are lacking quality. And I say again, Ricky and everyone listening and watching, Bergvall's beautiful touch for Decky's second goal. That's instinctive talent. That is a young man. And I believe if you're good enough, you can be young enough and you can play football. And maybe occasionally as a
vision,
football club,
vision doesn't know age, does it, Russ?
Yeah,
Vision
we haven't done that.
Yeah,
I think
Beautiful.
over the years. And maybe Ange is going to do that, because we all know that, love him or still question him, Ange Postecoglou is going to be under quite a bit of pressure when you look at our fixtures: Newcastle, Everton, Leicester away, Arsenal, in the first few games. I mean, those are games that could go wrong for us. Please God they won't, and we'll make a great start. But I think we're going to have to call on some of these young players. Archie Gray, for a very young man, second half. I mean, the strength he showed to win the ball back and use it so intelligently. This is something that we've been starved of a little bit, I'm afraid to say. So credit to the club and to Ange for identifying these players and him saying to the club, I want these boys, because we have to build for the future. We have tended to plod along with the same players, from season to season with a couple of additions. And we've made some good additions, one of them being James Maddison. But for some reason, he is now under pressure, I think, for his place. And I think, as a number 10, Lucas Bergvall is really close to getting the nod, I think. And that would be something, wouldn't it? And I think he'll grasp it, with both hands. But to go back to the starting 11, much as expected, quite a few first teamers. It was just the disappointment and the kind of disjointed play that Ash was talking about so eloquently when he was speaking. He's going to say some more, I'm sure, in a minute. That is the concern. And I don't see that with other top teams in the Premier League when I've watched them in part or in full playing games. There's some tremendous teams that we're up against. And these are basics of team football and winning football. And we've got to get it right. Otherwise, we're all going to be sitting here in, maybe Christmas or a bit beyond going, well, there you go, another season's gone. We don't want that to happen. We want to actually make progress. And we can. It's just a few things have got to be fixed, particularly at the back. I really don't know what's going on there.
Well, hopefully, Russ will bring music to your ears and many more Spurs fans out there. Ange Postecoglou is currently holding his post-match press conference where he says on the opportunity of possible Tottenham transfers, he said there'll be more movements on the market. There'll be some more activity to come, which I think, look, we all need to hear and want to hear on the back of that display where, again, there's troubling concerns. Ash, you brought this actually up in your intro to the show that it took Spurs only 24 seconds to open the score, and it was a house on fire start. Kulusevski intercepted a Bayern pass straight away. Johnson ran up the pitch, sent it back to him, albeit just behind him, although the Swede loses the ball. It bounced back to him and he touched it home. I mean, look, he's had a phenomenal preseason, you've got to say, and for a player that now has been almost inverted into what's now been a false nine, it was a good start for Spurs. And what do you make overall, Ash, of Kulusevski's pre-season? Because I think there has been concerns over the last 18 months or so that he really has lost his way. Never looked like the same player that we signed in that first season at the club. Do you feel he looks a different and more exciting prospect going into this upcoming season for you?
Yeah, I think coaching staff probably identified that he's a player that can play in multiple positions. And a lot of the fan base was screaming to play him a lot more central. And since he's played there, I think he's played in as an 8 and he's played as a false 9. And today he played in the false 9 and the right wing. And he produced a goal and an assist from both positions. So, yeah, I think his work rate and his defensive contributions, Andrew will love that because you need someone that's going to be pressing from the front. And I think there was at times, and I've seen in this preseason definitely, when he's even been defending, like he's had to turn into a centre back and clean up. Do you know what I'm saying? So Kulusevski just helping us in the build-up play. I think that's what's so important because there's many times when we're trying to play out and the forward had been Son before, or in the past in the season just gone, it had been Richarlison, and we had lost possession in that middle third. And that's when we would concede chances from the opposition. So clearly, I think he's done well in retaining possession in those central areas, linking play, decision making hasn't been too bad either, because that's been a big critique from a lot of Spurs fans that he sometimes he delays it too much. He wants to get on his left foot and he wants to cut in, and teams have figured that out and become really predictable. But I also think today he did. I mean, if I'm being ultra harsh, there was a chance I thought, just play. I think it was Son. Play Son in, or it was either Son or it was someone anyway. I was play him in, and he delayed it for a second again, and then that chance was either played behind Son or it was just played too late. I can't remember which one it was off the top of my head. I don't have a photographic memory. I apologize, but yeah. But overall, Kulu, I was quite happy with, and I think, even when he came off, I think the fans inside the stadium appreciated the quality that he possesses. And it's funny because there's been some debate the last time I was on the show, what players we should get rid of. And Bentancur came up, Richie came up, and then so did Kulusevski. I don't know if he was listening. And his performance.
Oh, they're listening, Ash. They're always listening. They're always listening.
Performances since then,
they're watching and listening. Always,
you know
always.
I mean? It definitely improved. So I've got nothing but praise for him. And the thing is if we do improve, because I know Ange, and he spoke about signings, said he wants more signings in the midfield, and now the fan base are screaming for a 6. They want a defensive midfielder, someone that can clean up. The problem is about the 6 or the defensive midfielder position, in my opinion, is when you've got Bayern Munich doing diagonals or balls into the channels, they're bypassing that midfield, therefore bypassing the 6. So it's not an easy solution. Even if we had Bayern Munich's midfielder, Paulinho, in our midfield right then today, as good as he is at winning tackles, he would have to be pressing high up and winning balls early, because you need to stop it from the source. Because sometimes the centre-backs were doing the long diagonal balls. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes it was the fullback, and then sometimes it was the wingers switching the play. So then we need to be ultra high. And I think that's the reason why we get caught out sometimes, because we are pressing so high up. That does leave a lot of space in the midfield, in behind, and the fullbacks and the centre backs are exposed because everyone's pushing super high up. So I don't think it's just a 6 thing. I think it is a tactical thing. Now, Ange says he wants legs in the midfield. He wants more legs. He wants like another proper star, in my opinion. I think that's what he means by when he said he wants more legs. But I think the difference being is that he wants maybe a box crasher, because I think my critique of Sarr is he's not arriving into those dangerous areas as much as maybe Andrew would want from one of his eights, because I think one eight's more creative, and the other eight, you've got to be box to box, up and down. But I think for Sarr, he hasn't got much creativity, in my opinion. But in terms of like breaking that box, you need to get shots off, be on the end of things. It can't always just be one of the wingers busting their gut to get inside there. He's also got to help with those attacking returns. Do you know what I mean? And I think that's something he can improve on, or something he can work on. But I think that's the reason why Ange just wants another kind of profile in that midfield. Me personally, and I think Ange kind of likes it, I would like a player like a Fabian Ruiz, because sometimes we need to slow the game down and just retain possession. And that takes pressure off the fullbacks, off the centre backs. We can move up the pitch slowly, and then we can get a foothold on the game. Too much of the time, we're trying to play into feet really quick. We're trying to build up really fast. But there's times in the game where you kind of need to circumvent that and manage the pressure. And you do that by just having someone that can retain the ball. And I felt like when Postecoglou was watching in that studio in ITV with Gary Neville, Ian Wright, and the rest of them, and he saw Spain, he was like, oh, that Fabian Ruiz, even though he's a bit older, he's not the age profile, but he's got that experience, that know-how, that technique to know when to kind of do it, when to pass through the lines, and then when to slow it down. I call it La Pausa, someone that can stop the ball, bait the team onto you. Once you bait the team onto you, then that's when spaces open up, and then that's when you do the through balls. And that's just my opinion from what I see. I don't know. Just quickly to touch on the last bit, you talked about the starting lineup. I was surprised to see Devine in. I thought Devine might be on his way out. So it was a surprise for me to see Devine, and also Skip as well. I thought Skip might be on the way out because there was news of Neto leaving.
Yep, and that offer.
The exchange was Skip, and I'm not sure how I feel about that, but yeah, cool.
I think, you know, Ash, on your point there, you make such a great point in relation to the way Spurs press. The problem is if not everyone does that press, it completely, utterly fails. And that's why, for me, like you just said there, Spurs have got a massive, massive problem. They've got to be really, kind of you, TJ, they've got to be so good at that. They've got to be ultra, ultra brilliant at that pressing game. Because if they don't, and one player is a couple of % off it, you see what happens today. And teams breaking us, and we can't handle the counter-attacks. And you mentioned Pedro Neto there. That's a guy that, as we saw last season, really did take Spurs apart at home because we couldn't manage that press. And I think, again, TJ, I'll let you come in and talk about Kulusevski if you want to, but I have to ask you about, again, the nature of the goals that we conceded. That first one, Bayern level, it's a free header at the back for Tell. It results from a free kick. Upper kind of bundles it in. Vicario saves it's then tapped in. But as we touched upon, the set pieces that we're facing show no end of really being a resolvement to, by the fact that even that last season, I think we all felt coming towards the end, maybe we found a slight solution to this. It seemed to have gone away. But during pre-season, it's an alarming worry. Is that fair for me to say that, TJ?
Yes, of course it is. Of course it's an alarming worry. I mean, to see, it's the definition of insanity, isn't it? You know, you do the same thing over and over and over again and expect a different result. Just to talk about Kulu very quickly. I mean, the chaps have discussed him at great length, so I don't need to harp on too much. But not only, I think, as he popped up as this really wonderful and valuable utility player. I mean, you know, talking about, we need players that can play in every position in across the front three. Well, you know, you can also add, to Ash's point, another 2 positions, an 8 and a false 9. So here you go, who's got a guy who can play 5 positions really well. And I can also see from Kulusevski that so much of that is personal will. A will to improve, a will to go to training every day with the right attitude, a will to prove the naysayers wrong, a will to catch his manager's eye. And that, for me, is something that is so totally admirable in any player. And I would also say essential. If you're not the kind of player who's going to turn up at training every single day and go, I will put in a performance time after time after time, whether it's doing reps in the weight room, whether it's doing stretches and lunges and improving my flexibility, whether it's about improving my right foot if I'm left-footed, my left foot if I'm right-footed. You know, those are the kind of things that I actually expect from an athlete. Like when I apply what I do for a living, if I feel there's something that I should really be better at that I'm not good at, I will work on that thing rather than just relying on the things that I know that I am good at. And so having the mental fortitude to admit to yourself, there are holes in my profession, and I'm going to go and work on those things. So I really commend him for that. Okay, now getting on to the defensive errors and the defensive deficiencies, which are glaring. Again, I'm going to preface this with that wasn't our starting back four. You've got Jed Spence playing at left back. Jed Spence is not a left back. He's a young man who hasn't really played much for Tottenham. He's had a bit of a torrid time of it recently. And again, this is going to affect people's mentality. However, his ability to turn with the ball, either with his left foot or his right foot, and skin his man was remarkable. He's taking on like Kimmich, like world-class players. And a lot of the time getting the better of him. So there's definitely a player there. And again, this is a player who has shown me, not that it matters, that he wants to be at the club and he wants to improve and wants to perform. That is absolutely fundamental. As far as space at the back, guys, we have to look at that and go, well, look, that's going to improve, isn't it? Because that's schoolboy football. And again, people calling for the 6, again, to Ash's point, well, a 6 wouldn't have done any good for us today because they were bypassing the 6. Like Toby Alderweireld-esque 60-yard diagonal passes from a wing back to a winger. So for me, what alleviates a lot of that pressure is can we have an actually exceptional winger that we can ping a diagonal ball? You know that Romero's got those pings in his locker. Can we not have somebody like Eze who's just constantly out on that touchline and you don't know whether to press him, you don't know whether to drop back. Do I give him 5 yards? Do I close him? Like, we need somebody like that who's going to alleviate a lot of pressure through the center, through the spine of the team. So for me, more importantly than is because I'm a huge Bentancur fan, right? A huge Ben. And also, I don't think Bissouma was that bad today. He's so strong. Again, his dribbling. Yes, I know he was at fault for the goal, but like, whatever, man. You're trying to play out the back. You make a mistake and it's a goal in a preseason friendly, right? His ability, again, to run with the ball, he's so strong. So if Bentancur can be more of a kind of static, like a Ruiz, like a Palhinha type player, like a Rodri type player, I think he has the ability to do that and has the creativity and the vision to also spray passes when he needs to. As far as somebody like Oliver Skipp, I thought he had he's okay, isn't he? Came on and always going to give it his effort, but that shows the levels. Like, brother, are you good enough to be at this club? No, mate. No, and we're trying to play you in different positions and all that kind of thing. Why he was in the team today? Shop window, 100%. He might as well come out with a price tag hanging off his ears. We're putting him in the window, guys. Do you fancy him? He's yours. He's English, remember? So we're going to ask you a little bit more. We need him out the window. There he is. He's a nice boy. He's an honest Tommy. He's the first one over the top. He's yours for 18 to somewhere in there, 22. Ollie Skipp.
TJ, can I ask you about Bentancur very quickly? Because I don't want to think we've glided over him. I know how much you love Bentancur. And I know, again, it's been a difficult summer for Bentancur.
Yeah.
In which really, without, to some degree, being at Spurs, it seems to have really catapulted to a point where he had those racial comments with regards to Son, which I think is deeply concerning, and we can't get away from that.
Well, it's regrettable. But again, people don't factor in culture.
No.
To us, it's not to all of us. To some of us, they're going to say, "Listen, that's deeply offensive." I think to all of us are going to say that was unwise, right? It lacked diplomacy, lacked delicacy, and to some people was really offensive. So you never want to say anything which could really offend a great amount of people ever, right? Yeah. But in his culture, and again, like changing things from language and all that sort of stuff, he wouldn't have meant it to have been offensive. So yes, it was a huge faux pas and an error. But look, he had a terrible injury, worked hard, came back early, and then had it again. And so it's very difficult for a player like that. Like, am I going to go into all of those challenges full-blooded, which you need to do in that position? He's struggling, but he's just such a gifted player. I think when he's 100% fit, I don't know when that's going to be. He's such a useful player to Tottenham. And again, we've got other players, in that position who can just go. I would keep him and work on him. I just think he's.
You think he's still got a future here? You still think he's got a future here, Benson?
I hope he does, Rick. I hope he does, because he's so talented, brother. He's so talented.
I think on that
and
point,
also, I think he loves it at Tottenham, and I think he wants to prove himself as well. Anyone that pushes themselves and comes back like 10 weeks before they were supposed to come back wants to be at the club, wants to please the fans, wants to please the manager. So I think, we should in turn show him a little loyalty and support and say, brother, take the time that you need, get fit, come in and do a job for us.
I think that's what's going to be really key. Is it's interesting to see what happens now in this next couple of weeks as to whether he does have a future here, because like you say, he's been out a long time. He hasn't really had much of a pre-season. He's come back of course, late because of the international commitments. You just feel Spurs midfield, as we've said, really throughout the show, and what we said throughout pre-season, really, it's missing something. And you can't get away from the fact, looking at it, that it is glaringly obvious. It's concerning. It is. I mean, Russ, coming over to you. There was a good save from Neuer, from Kulusevski, although a goal kick was given after a penalty appeal at the other end. Son knew off his line. He had to go from distance. The keeper was able to grab it. And then at the other end, Dragic did well with a sliding interception into the Spurs box. But then, again, Spurs defensively all over the place. Gnabry had been left unmarked way too many times on the right wing. Bayern just kept working the ball wide on the left, with Tau then trying to quickly switch it across. And yet another sloppy goal conceded from Spurs. Vicario's pass out to Basuma was closed down quickly. The ball came to Gnabry, who fired it low into the net. And it all came from Spurs trying to play out of the back yet again. Russ, a thing that you've heard me say to you so much over these last 12, 18 months. Again, poor goal, Russ, to concede.
Really poor, but a really good finish, incidentally, from a player that we've seen do it time and time again for Bayern Munich at the highest level. It was interesting just listening back to what you guys were saying about pressing and how it has to be spot on and everybody has to be 100% on their game. Otherwise it breaks down. And I think that's a really good point. I was thinking back to the last time, ironically, the period where we pressed as a football team and was so dangerous was under Pochettino. And if we take our minds back to the Battle of the Bridge, we know how it ended, but the way we started that game was very typical of the way that we were playing at the time. And we were 2-0 up before they could even wake up, Chelsea. That was how we used to press. And this is something with Nuno and with Antonio Conte, who had a different way of playing football, that we've completely lost. A lot of the players have been with us for a while, including the ones like Harry Kane and Dele Alli, of course, are no longer with the club. That it was almost as if they forgot that. And I think Ange knows the importance of the press. But for some reason, we don't seem to be doing it very well at all at the moment. And it was demonstrated perfectly in this game. And when we don't get things right, we panic with the ball, we lose it. And to lose it at the back, I mean, for the second goal, I mean, it was shocking, really, wasn't it? So I don't know how he's going to get over that problem without bringing in a calming influence in midfield. Because if we're really honest with that midfield, is it good enough for the top four to get into the top four? That midfield as is now, the one that he's going to start with at Leicester, probably isn't, he now? And that's why he needs legs. He does need somebody in there.
Can I ask you, Russ, to follow up on this? Is it a point for you that the playing out from the back needs to stop because it's now 2 mistakes in 2 games? Or is it a case that we just need to get better at it? Which one is it for you?
Well, I think it's a confidence thing. Let's think back. I remember it as if it was yesterday. We're away at Brentford, the start of last season. And the way the players were playing in tight areas, playing out of the back, we were all watching it. I think I was on the show after that. And we were going, how on earth in those little triangles in such tight spaces were they getting the ball out? And then we were on our way. And we were all in shock. But that's how we were playing at the beginning of last season. So something has happened from 3 months into the season to where we are now, because as far as I remember, I'm sure we can all remember some horrendous moments at the back in the last 2 or 3 months of the season, which ended up costing us probably a top 4 place. But, you know, we must look forward. But they've got to get a grip on it. And I actually think there is a little bit of a lack of leadership in there. And I said this last season, when things go wrong, you don't see one person grabbing them all, metaphorically speaking, by the throat and say, right, come on, calm down. This is what we're going to do. Remember, think, believe. I don't see that at all in our team. Now, I might need new glasses, but I like to think that I watch the games quite closely, you know. And I think, once again, Ange talking about legs, somebody's got experience and the skill in midfield, tough player to find, but will bring that leadership. And I think if we get that in midfield, I think that people are not going to be able to play through the line so easily, because we'll be able to adapt a tactic with a bit more experience, because we do look quite often a bit one-dimensional, and people worked us out last season, let's be honest.
They did, and you can't get away from that. I mean, Ash, just to cover his third goal, they don't get any easier, they don't. Kulusevski loses Muller from a free kick and heads home. And you know what? Our ineptitude at dealing with the set pieces is just so frustrating. I mean, another situation where there's poor marking again. We've got Vicario, who seems to be absolutely rooted to the goal line, which many would say in footballing terms, it's suicidal. And you know what? When you look at the goal we conceded there, you know, maybe a little bit harsh as Dragic actually won the ball for the free kick, but the referee then thought he fouled Tell. I can't lie. Whoever's supposed to be on the far post at that point was having a horribly time defensively. That's the 4th time in that half that a Bayern player had a free header at the same post. I mean, I know it's pre-season, Ash. I know there's a mixture of players, but that's still alarming, right? I mean, how can we be in a situation where a Bayern player, for the 4th time in that half, as a free header? We've brought in 2 new coaching staff members. We've had a pre-season where we've drove the players out of Asia, Korea, bless them, run them ragged. And here we are in a half against Bayern Munich where, for the 4th time, we're being outdone. How is that possible, Ash? Can you compute that?
It's because the man them didn't pass over the notes from the previous coaching scheme. So that's the reason why.
I think Chris Davis, bless his heart, I don't think we can level it in, but you're right. Worrying. It's worrying, worrying, Ash, right? Worrying.
No, of course it is. You look at the left back, as I said before, Jed Spence. Between him, Vicario, and I think it was Kulusevski that was the nearest to the player that scored the header in the end. They're not looking over their shoulder. If you're looking over your shoulder when the ball's coming over you, Vicario's got to command that 6-yard box a little bit better and sort out that defensive line, in my opinion. But as I said before, yeah, that free kick that happened just before, as you said, you know, 𝐿𝐸 conceded it, but leading up to it, I just felt like we kept making the same errors when playing out from the back. And I hate to repeat myself, but when you're playing out from the back, sometimes what you want to do is have an overload on one side, and that's the way you kind of get out of that, you know, playing out from the back. That's how you beat the press, when you've got some of your more confident players going across. They're going to help players like 𝐿𝐸 that might not be super confident on the ball, and then they won't lose it. Or if Poro's struggling, you bring an extra midfielder into that kind of area, and that stops that happening where 𝐿𝐸 starts panicking, loses the ball, you know, concedes a free kick in a dangerous area, and that whole thing could be avoided. But yeah, it was just lapses of concentration, players not switching on. It's just the same old same. Do you know what I mean? And you've got to be tight to your man. I think we've spoken about zonal marking and man marking before, but I feel like when that happens, you need to watch the runners. You need to be tighter to your players, knowing where they're going to be. And I think because Kulusevski wasn't really tight enough to his man, Jed Spence let the ball go over his head. Headers unchallenged. And it wasn't the first time. It happened, as you said before, numerous amounts of times in the game. And unfortunately, we got punished in the end. And when you're not proactive and you're reactive, especially in
true.
the box,
Yeah.
those things are going to happen over and over and again. But again, it's a coaching thing. It's It's coaching. Set piece coaches. That's what the fans want. We might have to get them in.
Well, I mean, on that point, Ash, you know, again, I really wonder whether, and I'll get you to answer this point, if Chris Davis decided to not take that Birmingham job and he was still here, do you think there would have been changes to the coaching staff, or do you think we would have just stuck with what we had? Because Ange had to make a decision because he lost his number 2.
It's hard to say, really, because obviously I would love to be a fly on the wall and we could say, like, you know, in hindsight, we would have done this or done that. He would have done this and made these changes. But these new guys that have come in, they're going to have to learn really fast. Someone just mentioned in the chat, in terms of forward lines, we need our forwards to help out defensively. Kulusevski is not the best in the air. When you got Dom Solanke, he's got a better headed record than Ivan Toney, funny enough. And if you look at his heat map, it wasn't just in the final thirds box, but it was also in the defensive box as well.
Yeah.
So I think him or even Richarlison, defending wise, you got the height of them as well, the height, the physicality.
Really important point that.
I remember when Kane was our centre forward, he helped a lot on set pieces.
Massively.
Udogie wasn't the worst on set piece at times. I know sometimes it could be a bit lax, but again, it's the height I'm talking about, the physicality, players that could give, you know, some of these players trouble. We've got height in the team. We just need to have those players on the pitch. So I think defending, we might be just a little bit of hopium there, like take some of those pills. But yeah.
Take them down your throat, most certainly. I mean, look, Spurs went into that half-time 3-1 down. Little positives. I mean, look, the great start with Kulusevski inside a minute, but Bayern without Kane firmly on top really punished us at every set-piece opportunity. And what we are going to do for our listeners on audio, we are going to go for our first break of the show. We've got over 4,000 of you that are taking therapy already, early therapy on Last Word On Spurs. TJ will not let me call it therapy. It's pre-season, right? It's pre-season. Do not let me start calling it therapy already. We'll be, like Ash said, we'll be on the pills already. We can't be doing that on Last Word On Spurs. It's far, far too early. Last, I must say again, thank you so much for all incredible support for the show. For me, it's like I've never been away. For Russ, it's more like for him, he's never been away. TJ's been with us in pre-season, as is Ash. And like I said, I think, look, we are under a week until the Premier League season starts for Spurs. They're just over a week until, of course, kicking off against Leicester on the Monday. I think so far on this show, you've got a range of emotions. You've got some that, of course, want to be optimistic. You've got the nature of the fact that we can't get away from the glaring concerns around set pieces. And as Ange said, there'll be more movement in the transfer window, which I think at the moment is music to our ears, because when you look at the Spurs squad in general, it does need help. It does need, you feel, something that's going to really change the game. And I mean, I think it was TJ speaking about Eze there earlier. I have to hope that the board that I know listen and watch Last One on Spurs is listening to TJ like they did 12 months ago. I think it was around that point where he mentioned Solanke, I think after the Bournemouth game where he ripped us to shreds. And here they are putting Dominic Solanke in the Spurs shirt. We're going to come on to him very, very shortly. But I just want to give some housekeeping here, guys. Just a reminder on Last One on Spurs that we are delighted once again to be sponsored by NordVPN. Now, if you're not aware by NordVPN in terms of what they do as a service, they host a number of different ways to enhance your internet experience. They're the fastest VPN in the world, which means there's no lagging, buffering. You can stream your favorite shows without really your bandwidth struggling to compromise. You can use Nord to set up your device. I think it's back in the UK, which means you can watch your favorite shows wherever you want to as per normal. And not only that, but the cost on the outlay of a VPN subscription with Nord is cheaper for you in the long run because you purchase streaming services in other countries at a much cheaper rate. So, for example, you can change your location settings to be in a different country to book flights where they might be cheaper than doing so in your current location. Also, security-wise, it's a great little system for you in terms of being able to protect yourself from other stealing things off your device. And also if you connect to a public Wi-Fi. It's a clever app. You can use it on a range of different devices. So why not give NordVPN a go? Please go to nordvpn.com/LDOS to get yourself 4 extra months on a 2-year plan. There is no risk with Nord's 30 back money guarantee. And this is, I think, the 4th year that we've got Nord as our partner. And we love them. We get messages all the time saying how much they help people around the world. I'll let you into a little secret. The guys won't be impressed by this probably. I was around, as you know, in Cyprus, and I was missing the last week of Love Island. And I thought, what am I going to do? I put my NordVPN in, changed my location settings. I've just lost Russ. Ash looks stunned. TJ looks disgusted. And I managed to catch the Love Island final. So it can be done. Go and check out NordVPN, that's for sure. And we are going to turn our attention back to the changes made in the second half. Russ,
do you want to be on Love Island? Do you want to actually be on it?
Well, I'm 12 years into a marriage with
I can see in your Speedos. I can.
10 years ago, Russ, maybe. I think my time has passed me by, that is for sure. But who knows what the future holds? I tell you, who knows what the future holds?
My name's Ricky. I support Spurs and like Love Island. People who feel sorry for you.
After this, I think they'll have offers coming in left, right, and centre. Subs-wise, second half, Spurs did make a host of changes in terms of the second half. We saw the back four being Gray, Romero, Van der Ven, and Udogie, the midfield of Skip, Bentancur, and Bergvall, with the forward line of Werner, Son, and Kulusevski up front. In terms of changes that we made there, Bentancur, Werner, Udogie, and Skip coming on for that second half. And just to give you things about that second half started, Eric Dyer not messing around at all upon his introduction, clattered into Kulu after launching into a slight tackle with Skip 10 minutes before that. He got booked for booting the ball away and then arguing with the referee. Nothing much really changed in the world of Eric Dyer, who obviously made his return to the Spurs Stadium. But a lovely moment, and a moment that I think many want to have hope that this is the start of many to come. And if I can come over to you, Russ, on this point, that is of Lucas Bergvall in a first assist for him in a Tottenham shirt. He won the ball back, playing a 1-2 with Son, teed up Kulusevski to slot the ball in to the bottom right corner. And I think there'll now be really pressing claims, as you mentioned, Russ, actually earlier in the show, for this man to be starting against Leicester, because it does feel he's perfect for the system. And it does feel that when everyone's around him, he makes everyone feel better playing. Is that fair? I know, again, it's pre-season, again, the opportunity we've had. Can only judge what I've seen.
I was over in Sweden. They rate him and Decky unbelievably highly. I've been there for 10 days and I used NordVPN and it was brilliant. And I didn't watch the final of bloody Love Island. But Martin Lunds has said who would drop Maddison? I wouldn't drop James Maddison for the game at Leicester, but I think he's getting pretty close to it. Could Bergvall play that role better at the moment? He's young, he's confident, he's got no fear. Maybe he could. The Swedes rave about him. And they say he will be starting. They've been saying to me, he'll be starting for Tottenham within a couple of months in midfield, and he's got Decky there. They'll have an understanding because of their common culture and language and bonding that they'll obviously be doing. I think Maddison is a question mark and Bergvall could fill that space. But also the other player, I don't know what all of you, just to widen it out a little bit to areas of concern, not wishing to be too negative, Sonny, or what's happened to him? Is our vision of him clouded by nostalgia? Because he looked to me as though either he wasn't 100% fit or his legs had gone a little bit today when he was trying to go past Bayern Munich defenders, and it wasn't as easy as it perhaps would have been 2 or 3 years ago. We know what a great finisher he can be, but he's not, if we're honest, he's not had a brilliant last 4 or 5 months in a Spurs shirt, really, has he? So what do we feel as an audience about Son? Is he undroppable? Is Maddison undroppable? Or is it time to experiment with some of these younger players and take a chance and see what happens? Because, you never win anything with kids, do you? Well, maybe we might do a bit better.
I think, on Son, Russ.
Take a risk. Why not?
Yeah, just to interrupt you on that point with Son, I think you're well when you're right to say that. But I think the thing with Son is he has lost half a yard. I mean, there's no doubt he's still a class finisher. I think the problem we've had with Son is that guy has been played, as we know, really out of position for a period because we've not had a vocal number 9 there. I'm hoping now with Solanke coming in, Son can now return to his natural position, of course, on the wing. And we see the Son that we all know and love. But I can't disagree that there's been certain games. I mean, again, he's had a decent games in pre-season, but there's been other games where, again, he has looked ominous and gone missing. I don't know if it's, again, a tiredness aspect to it. I don't know, again, whether, again, it's the fact that we're playing him out of position. I think at the moment, if I'll be honest with you, from me, I think we've got more glaring issues in the squad, bar Son at the moment. I think the winger situation for me, TJ brought him up earlier. I think, for me now, with no issue around the Neto situation now, of him obviously no longer going to be a Tottenham target, I think you've got to be looking at Eze now. And I know obviously Palace have lost, they're going to be losing 𝐂𝐻𝐻. Of course, they've lost 𝐅𝐸𝐸, but the reality is that, as we know of Eze, he's got a release clause. So the reality is, if you go to Crystal Palace and you offer him up the money it is to release him, they can't say no. But I wonder, like I say, with Tottenham, and many will laugh at this when I say this, have you ever known Spurs to break their club record transfer window or transfer fee twice in one window? It just doesn't seem to happen. So, I mean, that's my concern with regard to now the end of the window as to what Spurs will do. But I'm quite interested as I say that to you. Ange Postecoglou's come out in regards to Dejan Kulusevski, and he was asked the question as to whether he'll play centre forward still following Solanke's arrival. And he said, no, I don't think so. I think the reason for us why we signed Dominic, and hopefully Richie should be ready as well, is that we want to have a player through that area who's a bit more accustomed to that role. Decky's done a great job for us, but I think his strengths and attributes are more in that attacking midfield or wide role. I think he was really developing. He's had a really good preseason for us, and hopefully it gives him some more flexibility and potency through the middle where he's been playing, because he can get into those scoring areas. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is that, again, I've been obviously banging the drum for bringing in a winger. I think, as TJ said earlier, we are really missing something special. And I look at us at the moment, and it just feels that we are a little bit too predictable. Teams kind of know how to play against us. They're working us out. And Ash touched upon the fact around the pressing situation. It just feels, TJ, I think you said it earlier, there needs to be some sprinkle dust. And it's no disrespect to Dominic Solanke. I think, look, we needed a centre forward. We did. I think there's more for us out there, and there needs to be, right? Has to be.
Yeah, definitely. And I think something as well that's really important. I think both of the chaps actually were talking about. We do look predictable playing at the back. Now, one of the attributes that is a glaring miss for Vicario, and I'm a huge fan of Vicario. We all are. Came in, did a job. We were like, look at this guy, cheap option, all that kind of thing. You know, Lee is constantly banging the Vicario.
Lee.
Oh, I know, and look, I agree.
Love him.
However, what Vicario has to, and this is going to tie into the winger thing. I promise you, I'm not just going out on a limb here. Not this time. What he has to add to his locker is you have to be able to do more than just pass the ball onto the ground to a central midfielder who drops and asks for it, or play it to one of the centre backs or wing backs who's standing next to you and calling for the ball in the penalty area. You have to be able to add that kind of 30 to 40 yard ping diagonally out to a wide player. Because when you're getting shut down like this, I actually think that Vicario was more at fault for that goal today than Biss or Spence. Both of them were getting shut down from both sides. Vicario shouldn't have played them the ball. He needs to be able to add an aerial diagonal ball 30 to 40 yards out wide, knowing that it's going to go to somebody who can receive it and then hurt you. Here comes my Eze stroke quality winger conversation. If your opposition knows you've got a wide man who can receive the ball, take it on the half turn and run at defenders, you're really in trouble. Obviously, like, you know, I'll give you Chris Waddle, Ginola, like two incredible wide players that we used to have who would receive the ball on a half term and just run at defenders and then have them go, oh my goodness, I just don't know how to handle this person. So that makes their press less effective and just gives us greater options. So Vicario has to add that. And then we need that winger who can really hurt people. Now, again, to Solanke, I know he's a friend of the show and he's a lovely lad, so I'll mention him. You know, John Lillywhite Rose put a thing on Twitter X earlier, you know, listing his stats and what are you most excited about? And I put, I am delighted to finally have an aerial threat again. Since Harry's departure, we haven't had somebody who's had a real aerial threat amongst our attacking players. And a bunch of the knowledgeable Tottenham people on Twitter came back to me and said, and let's not forget that he will also offer that from defensive positions. And they are absolutely right. So that's going to be fundamental for us moving forward. As far as Kulu playing number 9, he can do it, but he doesn't need to. And again, people saying, oh, Richie or Solanke. Guys, we have to have competition for places,
100%
quality, like not to mention that lot, you know, from around the corner, but like, look at their left wing. And we go, you know, do I bring on Trossard or do I bring on Martinelli? Like, and we've got, do I play Timo Werner? or do I play Solomon? Like, are you kidding?
Yeah. Yeah,
like
that's where that is where there's that gap, unfortunately, between the two football clubs.
That gap is sizable. You know, it's not even a gap. Like, you know, to quote Sam Jackson, it's a different sport. It's not even a different league, right? So we have to kind of show that we're going to be that club. So to your point, will we go out and break our transfer record twice? Maybe. Because we need somebody special, bro. We need that element of stardust. The fans need it. The team needs it. And I just think that makes a huge difference. Yes, we've got defensive issues. To Ash's point, to Russ's point, let's hope that the coaches are going to go, okay, guys, let's not leave 30 yards behind us on every play. And also, if you are a wide player, you have to come back and offer support, especially if we're inverting and, you know, playing Spence or Porro or whoever it is, Udogie or whatever, kind of as midfielders. Well, then we need support when we're out of possession.
Yeah, I think that's really, really fair. Look, in terms of the other aspects of the way that game ended, Spurs did bring on Mikey Moore, replaced Kulusevski, saying up with Berghuis boots at the time. He was off the pitch at the moment, changing them. And then there was that standing ovation for Harry Kane, a big cheer as he came on for the final 10 minutes of Bayern. You might feel he deliberately put that shot over the bar. And then Will Lancashire came on for Heung-min Son. And bit of a bizarre incident towards the end of the game. Romero ran a fair length of the pitch to shove �Kingsley away after he was getting in the face of 19-year-old Will Lancashire. Romero showing, as always, the protection that he gives his colleagues. The striker had bundled into João Palhinha rather late, and the Bayern man was not happy with the teenager, but the Argentine ran in to protect him. Look, final takeaways from it, Ash, before we have a quick chat on Solanke. Ash, we've now dissected it. We've had the therapy on it. Worried or need to see what Spurs do in this next week to then be really concerned? How concerned are you, 1 to 10, by that display overall for you, Ash?
I think it's a concern that some of the old, I think some of the same concerns are coming up again that we had last season, have repeated itself in the ugly rear head again in this game. And I think you can say, yeah, the result doesn't matter because it's a friendly, but I think it's more the performance. And the reason why I harp on about it is because that's what Ange had said. It's not about the results. It's about the way we play on the pitch. That's what he was trying to install in the players and in the actual fan base as well. And then on top of it, he was the one coming out and saying, we've got to get out of this top four mentality. We need to start challenging. And so that expectation has completely changed. I don't know about you guys, but
totally agree. I totally 100% agree with you. 1 billion%.
Listen, I was told about PSR, FFP. Certain teams are going to be struggling. We're going to have a financial edge and an advantage. And so the glaring weaknesses of the squads of the first 11, I'm not talking about the actual squad, actually, the actual starting 11, where you want to kick on, where you want to push, where you want to improve, to, you know, support Ange and the style of play. You want those particular positions addressed. And these guys have said it already on the panel. They've said that we need a winger. We need wingers, not even a winger. We need wingers. We need a striker. Now, obviously, we've addressed the forward with the striker situation. But in terms of the wingers, I don't know about you guys, but that Neto one, that kind of hurt. Because obviously, I've been keeping up with the talks of the ITKs, etc., the journalists. And they said either Eze or Neto. And I thought, if I'm going to get a Solanke, it was like, I'm happy with it as long as Neto comes with it. Or as long as I get an Eze with... Do you see what I'm trying to say?
100%.
Does Neto's fitness not concern you, Ash? Because I was actually okay with Neto because he's going to be about 60, 70. He's just not fit, brother.
27% of Wolves' games in the last, I think, 3 seasons that he's played.
He's just not fit, man. Like we
No,
can't, whether we could afford it or not. I just don't think we can go and drop. Let's call it 65 on a player that's maybe going to play 12 times in a season. Was my opinion, bro.
I can only talk on my truth. I don't know about you guys. I can only talk about my truth.
Yeah.
And the way I saw it was, as I said before, FFP, PSR, 400 million leg room. Do you know what I mean? Revenues coming through the roof. We've got another 30 from the council, ways to produce concerts and other,
Right,
you
yeah.
know. So
Yes.
7th or 8th richest club in the
Yeah.
world, club in
You're
London,
right.
and then Chelsea come along and do what they do. But put that aside, I hear about the whole Neto thing because obviously he's not always injured, he's not always fit. But
No.
I thought with the rotation, you know how Johnson was good coming off the bench, but starting a bit lackluster. With Wolves, he had to play a full 91, 92 minutes, and that's when he got injured because he played the whole game. He's their main man; they depend on him. Where more like the Neto was, he would play 60 minutes, and that's when Ange typically does his change 65 minutes, 70th minute. That's when he swaps him over. Johnson comes on his fresh legs. It's a different dynamic. You've got different.
Would Bakayoko or would he give you that
Bakayoko? I'll be honest, I was a massive fan for like forever. I did analysis on him. Right,
because I'd like him,
but I watched him in the Euros, and I was like, looks a bit raw, as in decision making, etc. That's what I took for him. However, that's international form. I don't know. Club level will be different amongst different players, slightly different. Do you know what I mean? Bakayoko, I still rate him highly. Do you know what I mean? There's other.
Yeah, I like him a lot, man. And again, I just feel, for me again, and like you said, you know, you can only speak your truth, and everything that you said, bro, you know, completely valid. Just from my opinion, and again, like perhaps not jaded necessarily, but perhaps to hark back to what we were saying about, you know, Benta, is that here was this magical player who could just glide through the midfield and wallop. He just got injured. And I think buying a player who's already kind of like that, perhaps I'm preventing myself from being too brokenhearted from getting a player who's magical and then him just break him and we never get to see him play.
Look, to be honest with you, my number one, and I said it on the show before, my number one was Eze. Still is,
yeah.
And I honestly think, I know he played in the front three and he predominantly played on the left-hand side, and loads of people see him as an 8, not as a left winger. I see him as a wide forward that drifts, that can play in a 10. That's how I see Eze. Do you know what I mean? But I think he's got enough ability and enough about him that he can play pretty much in the false 9 if needed, the 10. He can play in the left wing or the right wing because he's so magical in that position. He can play as an 8. He can create. He can dictate the game. He's got something different, a bit of an X factor. And so for me, if I don't see something on that level, that's when I'm like, what are we doing as a fan base? Is this acceptable? No. I'm being real.
I get it, man. I agree. Yeah.
For me, it's a thing where like everyone's got their breaking point. Like, so when is enough? When do we like say, you know what? Listen, we need to do something about this because we're supposing now we go for another player that no one saw coming, and it's like, oh, really? And you kind of feel a bit deflated about it. Can he really help us for a title challenge? That's what I'm going back to, because that's the expectation. Like
That Ange just told us.
That's what I'm saying. If Ange came out and he was like, you know, measured with it, and he was like, you know what, guys, we finished what we finished. You know, I've got a few youngsters I want to blood in, blah, 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 blah. Came with that energy. Well, we wouldn't hear me talking like this on the show. You know what I'm saying? So from when he put that expectation, I was like, okay, you know what? If that's the route you want to go, I'm for it. Because listen, I'm tired of being ranted about my team not winning a trophy for however many years. I don't know about you guys.
That's pretty fair. I think that's fair, Ash. I think you're fair.
I don't know, like, I just want to.
I think that's fair.
I don't want to be a bridesmaid anymore. I don't want to be organizing the wedding. I want to be the one that goes down. I want to grab the flowers. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Am I making sense? I don't know.
You are making sense. I think you say it there, Ash. We've been the bridesmaid for far, far too long. And the problem is, as you said there, if I can come to Russ on this point, the expectation, as Ash has eloquently put there, Russ, has been set by the manager. It's the manager telling us he wants to compete for the title. It's the manager telling us he wants to win. How far are we away, Russ, in your mind from even thinking about challenging where TJ just said it earlier, you looked at Arsenal's options on the wing and we put that the gap. I mean, TJ quoted it more of a sizable, you couldn't call it a gap, a sport, to put it bluntly. How far are we away, Russ, from challenging your mind when you look at this squad at the moment?
Well, great question. Agree with TJ, and I agree with Ash 1,000,000%, because it's either marquee or mediocre. And what Ash wants, and a lot of the fan base wants, marquee signings. They don't come along at Spurs very often, they. Klinsmann, Ginola, Van der Vaart, that extraordinary last moment signing.
10 years ago, Russ, isn't it? Over 10 years ago, Van der Vaart now. It's incredible. Incredible.
Now, Dominic Solanke, to me, he's not mediocre, but he's not a marquee signing. So I'm trying to sort of, correlate in my mind what Ange says and how we're going to get there. Now he's got the shirt and he's going to wear it, and I bet you he starts at Leicester. I want him to score every time he has a shot, a header, whatever. I don't care how it goes in. I want him to be the best striker in the Premier League. He's coming to us because it's a challenge and he wants to play for the national side as well. How's he going to do that? Score a hatful of loads of goals for Spurs. So let's hope that he does it. But there are other areas of the pitch where we need a couple of marquee signings. Ash is right. Eze would be one of those, but you've got to pay the money. You can't go to Wolves and say, we'll give you Oliver Skip and 40 million quid instead of 60 for Neto and expect them to take you seriously. When Chelsea can just go, yeah, we can spend that money. There you go. Bosh, done. That is mediocre transfer chat. I think, what Ash is saying is quite right. We have money from Harry Kane, other sources. The club has money. If you really, really, really want to back the manager who's desperate to bring a trophy to the club, then you've got to get the old spondoolies out. It's as simple as that. And it's season after season after season of being the bridesmaid. Well said, Ash.
We say the same thing on here, don't we, a lot, though? I mean, this is the thing we do. I mean, look, I do want to bring, if I can, Solanke into focus. I mean, Ange has had some words on Solanke. Look, again, depending on what you believe in the media, many would say we looked at him 7-8 weeks ago. He's now become the top target. He's come left field. I mean, look, we have to take what's been given to us as face value. And just come out and said on Solanke, which I think is important to bring into the show now in the context of it, as we are looking to close it and obviously round up on this point, that Ange's words were, Solanke was the one. I was very keen to get in. It took a while to get him over the line, but I think he'll be a great fit for us where he's at in his career. We identified him because he's the attributes we're looking for. He's had to work his way up. I always think that's a good thing. It's all a positive in their career. You wonder how they'll deal with setbacks. He's had a quite early, obviously, start to his career. He's pushed on. I don't see any reason why he shouldn't be in position to start for us against Leicester. He's done most of pre-season. Since I spoke to him, I got a real sense that he had a burning desire to take his football to another level. And he's really keen on this challenge for himself here at a big football club. Like I said, he's really keen to make an impact. And our job is to make sure we provide him the platform to do so. TJ, it's gone Solanke crazy in the last, obviously, 15, 24 hours on the back of the man penning and signing for Spurs at Hotspur Way. He stayed there last night. He was introduced to the fans earlier at the stadium. There's been, I think, some jokes online where he looked already quite perplexed as to what's going on. What I'd say, mate, is get used to it. Welcome to Tottenham. Yeah, what can I say? Welcome to the crazy trainers, Lee McQueen.
Yeah,
Say.
Listen, he's going to be subject to a level of scrutiny and attention that he's never known in his career. Of course, Russ is absolutely right. Ash is absolutely right. I'm sure a great many of the viewers and listeners are also absolutely right. Is Dominic Solanke a marquee signing? No, he is not. And no disrespect to clubs who are kind of lower down in the league or whatever, but it's almost impossible to become a marquee signing if you're playing for a club like Bournemouth. However, why I was such a fan of his last season and why I said very early on into last season that I think he would be an ideal signing for Tottenham, especially with Ange at the helm. All those stats and everything are now out there. He's a very, very impressive young man. He's English, which helps us with our homegrown quota, which might be irritating for some people, but it's the law. You have to follow it. Also, he's 26 years old. So again, that works for us. But is he the kind of person that makes you excited? No. When I heard that he was coming, I was like, good. I wanted him to come and I think he suits us. Am I kind of turning cartwheels down Main Street? No. If we go and get Eze, and you know what, guys, I think we're going to get him. I am a glasses half full person. Anyone who knows me personally or anyone who has ever even seen me on this show knows that I am an optimist. And I do think we'll get him. I think he wants to come. I think he's desperate to go to a bigger club where he can really shine. And so I think if we do bring in Eze, I think he's the player that gets us excited. He exhilarates the entire squad. He gives us that much needed jolt in the arm so we can then stop having this tedious, repetitive top four conversation. Even when we were that club under Poch, like, yeah, it was great, but God, it was tedious. We just want to win.
Yep.
You know, I don't want to be that club. It's just like, oh, fourth, oh, Champions League, big deal. Make it to the quarterfinals, get knocked out, make it to the final once, you know, armpit handball, 90 seconds lost. You know,
Yep.
I don't want to be that club anymore. I want to at least look like we can challenge. And so looking at our current squad, does that squad challenge? No, it doesn't. But we're 1 or 2 players away. And again, have one more go. Listen, say to Palace, listen, man, I'll give you Giovanni Lo Celso and 40 million quid. How about that?
We might have to push ourselves there, TJ, but I agree with you. Do anything you can to get him that.
Let him go. Or, you know, I'll tell you what, I'll give you
him in the building
and 50 million quid. You know what I mean? Like whoever it is, I'll give you Dane Scarlett and 60 million quid.
I think you said it. Do what you've got to do, TJ, to make it work, right? Do what you've got to do.
Get the man through the door. Get the man through the door. He wants to come. I know he wants to come. Get him through the door. Get him firing. Get us. He'd sell shirts overnight. We'd love to be walking down the street with Eze shirts. Of
course we would.
You know,
of course we would.
Get him through the door. Get us excited. Please, you know, somebody throw the bouquet so Ash can catch it.
Listen, guys, I've got to ask you one final question before I do close this show, but it's only fair for balance. I just want to give some of the comments that Solanke has said upon joining the football club. He said he admitted that he cannot wait to get started at Tottenham after joining, in his words, a huge club with ambitions that meet mine, that match mine. Again, I'll make you the judge of what you feel about those comments there. The ambitions we'll see in the next few weeks of this transfer window. He said, I feel delighted. It's a magnificent club. I'm delighted to start, meet all the boys. I can't wait to get started. Obviously, it's a huge club with great ambitions that I want to be part of as well. It's a great manager, great players, and I feel like it definitely suits my style as well. So I can't wait to get started and do my stuff on the pitch. He's familiar with James Maddison. Of course, those two did link up during his time at England. He said, I've had quite a journey in football. Everyone's journey is different, but I wouldn't change it. I've had a lot of ups and downs. I think that's made me who I am today and off the pitch. I'm grateful really for everything that's happened through my career so far, and I want to carry on the form of last season. I'm improving all the time. At the moment, I'm full of confidence. I feel like the game has improved a lot. I'm at the point in my career where it's all starting to come together. I think that was the start of last season. This season is not that far away. I'm sure that the boys will make me feel very welcome and I can learn from each and every one of them. The style of players I've mentioned definitely suits me. I'm looking forward to gelling with everyone. I would say my attributes are movement, goals, work hard, link-up play, and hopefully I can bring all that to Tottenham. I'm an ambitious young man. I work hard for the team. I want to leave it all out there, and I love winning. So hopefully we can win a few things together. Dom, from your mouth to God's ears, we hope you are right. Guys, I have to ask you this because you are going to be part of our regular panelists on Last Word on Spurs for this upcoming season. So a nice two-part question to ask you all. I have to ask you for your prediction of where Spurs will finish and what Spurs need to do in the window very quickly in order for this to be a successful season. And I'm going to start with Ash. Ashmatic, my man. Let me ask you, Ash, what do we need to do and where will Spurs finish in this upcoming season?
I think if we kick off like this, which I think we will, and we don't make any more signings as it is, I feel or I fear that we may either stay the same as 5th or we may regress into 6th position. That's my fear. What do we need to do? I think you can't get everything done in a summer window season. You need windows after windows after windows after windows, but you need to add quality first. And I think the first line of quality is the front line, as Ange said. Get that front line sorted out first, meaning the wingers included, right? Because we know we've got, I don't know if it's going to be Dirty Dom or Danger Dom. You know what I'm saying? So I'm hoping it's Danger Dom, right? People call him Big Dom, pause. I don't want to call him that, but I'm hoping Dom does the
business. Does the business.
Yeah, I hope he does the business, bro. But like, yeah, I just think add quality and in the next window, add quality and then you will get there. You will eventually get, rather than spending, cutting corners,
Yeah.
30 mil here, 20 mil here. Do you understand what I'm saying?
100%, 100%.
Like if it does, if we have to break another record, break another record. Do you know what I'm saying? And in the next window, you add another 2 or 3. A lot of people want everything fixed now. It's not going to happen. We're not going to get the fullback, the 6, the centre back, maybe a backup keeper. Do you know what I'm saying? But once we're in this summer window, let's buy quality that help us push up the pitch, that help us get more assists, that get us to score more goals. Do you know what I mean? Because I think that's where we were lacking. We were lacking in the finishing department. We created
100%.
a lot by statistically, if you look at the stats, but in terms of finishing, we weren't that great. I think we were seventh in terms of finishing, in terms of goals. So I think, well, big chances, sorry, not goals. In terms of big chances, I think Spurs were 7th. So that's a Europa Conference League position. So, I mean, maybe I was being a bit too optimistic with a 5th or a 6th finish. Do you know what I'm saying? But that's the reality. Sometimes
You got to be real. Yeah.
Sometimes it's a thing where, you're being negative, but not really. It's just how I perceive things. If we don't hear to what's coming up, like we saw against Bayern Munich, the first half, we saw what happened. And so those things are alarming. It wasn't until they changed about 8 or 9 players that we start maybe playing a little bit better. And then we put our B team on, and then it looked, all of a sudden it looks better. But reality is the first half was really what happened. Do you know what I mean?
I think also, to be fair to that point as well, and balance you out as well on that, Ash, is that I think during pre-season we've conceded goals that have been alarming, not just in this game, but throughout pre-season. And I think you can't hide or get away from that. So to back up your point further there, I think it's a crucial next 3.5 weeks of Spurs in the transfer window. We'll have you covered on Last Word On Spurs. I'm sure Ash will be here as well at points that work needs to be done to push your prediction from a 7th, hopefully up to a 5th and a 4th and a 3rd, because they're going to be busy and they'll get Eze in and hopefully make us feel better. But I've got to say, Ash, it's been an absolute pleasure having you back on. It has been an absolute pleasure. Please, God, they listen and answer you. We're going to ask the boys very quickly, then we're going to close. Russ, I've got to say, mate, it's like you've never been away. I've missed you. The audience have missed you as well.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure. Been a pleasure.
Same question to you, Russ, if I can now. Where will Spurs finish? And what do they need to do between now and the end of the window to put us in a position where we can have a decent season?
I tend to be in Ash's camp 6, 7, because everybody else has improved. Big clubs, it's a major challenge. And what have we got to do? Pray, I would say. You know, unless we can bring in a couple of it's marquee in inverted commas, if they exist these days, but everyone knows what I mean. No mediocrity. We got a chance. I hope I'm wrong, but that's where I am at the moment.
We will revisit predictions, I can tell you, through during the season of what Spurs do. Again, Russ, it's like you've never been away, mate. We can't wait to see you, mate. You're back with us for Everton, so we're looking forward to that.
Yes.
Hopefully Spurs have had a storming start to the season up until that point.
Nice.
TJ, give us something. Give us anything. Look, close with you. You want to say, you've been called Mystic Meg over the last 7 days on the back of Solanke joining. Tell us something optimistic. Give us something to hold on to in this next week or so coming up. Spurs fans need you, TJ. Give us something.
I will. Okay. I do think we'll bring in. I think we'll bring in another 2 players. I think we'll bring in another 2 players before the season starts, and I do think one of them will be Eze. I think Eze signs for Tottenham, which would give us, like I said, a much needed jolt of optimism, enthusiasm, and energy. If that happens and we address our glaring deficiencies in our back line, I think we could do 4th. If we address defensive issues before anything else. I think Solanke's going to come in and do a job. And then we bring Eze in, who'll just put the ball on his head and wallop. Kulusevski putting the ball on his head from the other side, wallop. And I think we could do 4th. What I would be delighted with, I would take 5th or even 6th with a cup. Give us a cup. Oh. I need a trophy. I'll take 7th and a trophy. Even if it's the Rumbelows Cup or the Carabao Cup or the Milk Cup or whatever it is they want to call it nowadays, right? Give us a cup. Let Sonny lift the cup, because goodness
to
we
win
love
something.
him.
We need to
And
win
it's
something.
impossible not to look at Sonny through the thickest of rose-tinted spectacles. My goodness, we adore him.
Yeah.
Let him hold a trophy in his hands, and then let us continue this rebuild. Remember, it took that lot from around the corner 4 to 5 years to be in the position where they are now. So I know we keep saying this, but we should manage our expectation. To Ash's point, if we continue to add quality piece by piece, we will get there. So that's what I offer to you, to this panel, to the listeners and the followers. I always say this as well. If you do like the show and you are listening and following, please like it, subscribe to it, share it. Ricky and the gang work so hard to produce a really quality pod. They're not all made the same, as we know. So if you're a fan of Last Word on Spurs, please do show him the love and support that he so richly deserves. Rick, thank you to you as ever. Ash, lovely to see you, my friend. Russ, I look forward to seeing you again as well. Thank you very much.
You guys. Look, it has been a great show. Again, the takeaways you can say is that the youth are the promising aspect to it. Defensively, we've got work to do in these next 7-8 days. Let's hope there is work being done on the training ground as well as in the market, as Ange just told us. But look, massive thank you to our watching audience. Over 5,500, 6,000 of you that have watched us live across all of our socials. I've got to say, the support for Last Word on Spurs in the last, couple of months has been absolutely unreal. I thought I'm going to get my chair back. I'll be honest with you, the way it's been going here. I mean, I've come back. I don't know why I should be coming back on the basis of what's going on here, but you've got fabulous guests like the wonderful Ashmatic. You've got TJ. You've got Russ that are going to be guiding you through the season and more to come. Guys, do keep the faith. We all need to stand together, and hopefully it's going to be a promising next few weeks. We are just getting started. We can't call it therapy yet, can we? From the wonderful actor TJ Ramini, from the brilliant extraordinaire broadcast extraordinaire Russ Williams, and from the superb Ash over at the Kings, Spurs Kings they are. We've been the Last One on Spurs. Please keep safe, keep well. Thank you so much for your tremendous support. And as always, come on you Spurs.